Sanbonani Kuruleni, Ikamala Mutula Sizo Masilela, and welcome to another episode of EkuPodcast. Joining me today is the HoD for Strategy and Corporate Planning to talk about the IDP and budget. Kunjanba.
I'm good and you, Tsholofelo.
Kindly explain in layman's terms what the IDP is and how it relates to the GDS.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us to the EkuPodcast. I think how I like to explain what the IDP is, like giving a scenario of a bus, so you can think of a bus. But before I go into the IDP, the GDS is the destination where that bus is headed, and the GDS is the growth and development strategy, which is the long-term plan of the city. So the GDS would have been adopted in 2012 and reviewed in 2015, and the GDS is the long-term plan that takes us to 2055. So it's got three phases. The first phase of the GDS is for it to take us to being a delivering city as a city of Ekurhuleni. The second phase is related to us being a capable city. Then the last phase, which is 2030-2055, is where the city envisages to be a sustainable city. Now, these three phases are underpinned by 5 thematic areas. The first one being to regovern, which basically speaks to how the city seeks to operate and function internally and externally. The second one is to regenerate, which focuses on our environmental well-being. You'd know there's topical issues around global warming and so forth. We get flash floods and everything else. And then the third one is around industrialization. You'll be aware that the city of Ekurhuleni would have been called the industrial or manufacturing hub of Africa. Now, obviously, as we move towards the future into 2055, we want to reindustrialize and create an enabling environment for the industries out there to be able to be at the forefront of industrialization and to maintain our status as the manufacturing hub of Africa. Then the other one is to re-urbanize. Re-urbanize is to make sure that we bring jobs closer to communities. We build livable communities where our communities are staying. So it speaks in the main to human settlement issues. And then the last one is to remobilize, which obviously speaks to how we ensure that there's public participation within communities and how communities have a say with what happens with the IDP now, which is the Integrated Development Plan. Now, the IDP, as I said, I like relating it as a bus, right? And the GDS is where the IDP is going. But of course, you can't speak about the IDP bus without speaking about the budget. And I will relate the scenario of the bus. So, in this bus, you have the driver, which is the city manager as the accounting officer, and then you probably have the tour operator or the tour lead, which will be the executive mayor. Now, you know a difference between the bus driver and the tour lead. So the tour lead cannot tell the bus driver that turn right, speed up, and so forth, right? It is the bus driver who knows the state of the bus, how much fuel is in the bus, and what are the resources that the bus needs to get to its final destination. And of course, as it were in that scenario, the fuel will then be all other resources, in particular the budget. So when you talk about the IDP bus, you cannot not speak about the budget. So IDP and budget, as I always say, is tongue and spit, right? So you can't separate them. One cannot work without the other. And of course, in that bus, you've got your passengers, which are your different stakeholders, your community members, your mayoral committee, council, different political parties in council, and of course the staff, who must make sure that everyone who's inside the bus is comfortable and so forth. And then you also have your head of departments who are responsible for advising the driver to say, look, driver, we are running out of fuel. So we need to stop and get fuel, or driver, we are running out of amenities and so forth. But of course, before that bus takes off, it must have a clear itinerary. And that itinerary in the main will be issues around the departmental business plans, in particular what we call the Service Delivery Budget Implementation Plan, the SDBIP, which is obviously is there to ensure that everyone in the bus is able to understand what services will be offered, at what cost are those services offered, and how those services will be implemented. Hence the word Service Delivery Budget Implementation Plan. So basically that's what the IDP is. And as I said, finance will advise the bus driver that we are going to Durban. You need so much fuel because of the distance. Strategy will come in and say the forecast is that on the road there will be rain or it will be snowing and so forth, and these are the things that you need to prepare for the trip as part of the itinerary, right? And of course, if you've been to any bus trip or any school excursion, there are always those sitting at the back, the cool kids, and we also need to mitigate against those many needs. Because we may find that those who are saying how I want more speed and so forth, right? And speed in the sense that they want to see more service delivery, they want to see quicker service delivery, they've got more needs. But as I said, the different departments, finance, on budget strategy, on the outlook, must constantly advise the accounting officer, no, we can't go too fast, petrol will end, or indeed go too fast, and so forth, right? So I like to think of the IDP as that bus going onto that journey. And of course, where the IDP starts is based on the current status of where the city is the city collecting enough revenue, and so forth.
I like this example you use of the bus.
Yeah. No, it's a very fun bus, and I think all residents should have an appreciation of what that bus can deliver and cannot deliver. So
yeah, true.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of stakeholders within this bus. You mentioned your HoDs, you mentioned
yes.
the different political parties. But the main stakeholder that I would like to focus on right now is the residents of the city.
Yes.
Those are the people who have employed us, in a sense, and make sure that we are the people who are responsible for service delivery,
yes.
and so forth. How important is public participation in the IDP process?
Yeah. So before I go to the thing of public participation, I think we must always bear in mind that local government, whilst its constitutional mandate is set up in the Constitution of the Republic in terms of services it must deliver, at all given times, the responsibility of the other stakeholders, staff, HoDs, and even council itself, in the main, is to ensure that we protect the revenue that the city is generating from business and residents, but also to enhance it, to come up with new methods and so forth of how to grow that revenue. But second and most importantly is, out of that revenue base, we'll then have a responsibility to meet the needs of this critical stakeholder that you're talking about, the public, the residents, the ratepayers, and that is to ensure that we have sufficient and quality service delivery that we give to residents. Going back to the question, community participation is not only a constitutional matter, but also in the Municipal Structures Act, there's a whole chapter dedicated to how important public participation is, because our electoral system or constitutional system is not only representative, so communities will vote for councillors, ward councillors will represent them in the council. They also have PR councillors who will also be their public representative. But in the main, it puts the residents at the center. And hence, you have Chapter 4 of the Municipal Structures Act, which speaks about community participation. Now, it is essential that we hear the views of the communities in terms of what is it that they want for their area of residence, and the kind of services that they're expecting But remember, these services must also be in line with what the city can deliver as part of those three areas that I spoke about in the GDS. Firstly, making sure that the city is a delivering city, so we can deliver the basic services. There's water, there's electricity, sanitation. There's sanitation as well. Waste is picked up in the streets and so forth. And after that, we become a capable city where we are able to be financially manageable, minimize service delivery protest, and then of course we want to sustain the trajectory going forward into 2055. So the residents, in fact, if I had to say who are the majority of people who are in that bus, I would say it's the communities, right? So you can even think of it as a double-decker bus. On the first floor or on the top floor, all of it is residents, and everyone else, the workers, staff, and councillors, they are on the first floor, as it were, right? So residents are essential to the processes of public participation, because they pay the rates, the revenue, they receive the services as part of service delivery. So whatever we do, those two things are aimed at them.
That's very important. You're saying that the public is in the center of this.
Yeah, correct.
In your experience, tell us, how has the residents been responding to this process? Do you like the response? Can we do more? Do you feel like the public are not aware?
Yeah. So of course we can always do more, but remember, we also have limited resources as a city. But I think the most important thing, obviously, to take into mind is that we've had this 2-3 years of what I call the blip, where you've had COVID and people could not participate and so forth. So what we have done is to look at the historical trends of participation. And in the year of COVID, we were not allowed to have any public meetings. So we were then able to use various technological applications that are available to us, and I'll speak later about that. And then immediately the year after and the following year, we were allowed to have at least 100 people per meeting. But what happened before COVID, pre-COVID stages, there was participation. However, the participation would not have been at the level at which we really wanted to be, right? So with the post-COVID scenario, I think what we want to do is to use technology better to also reach out as many people as possible in terms of participation. So in the past 5 years, there's been participation, but from where I'm sitting, you can always do better. I mean, we have over 3.5 million residents in the city of Ekurhuleni, and the adult population is well over 2 million. So if you ask me, I would love to have 2 million comments or inputs from communities about what they want in their areas of living.
So I take it you're not happy with the participation so far?
Yeah, no, we want to improve it. And remember, when I say you'd want, if it was up to me, you'd want to have 2 million plus. It's not an issue, because we live in the era of big data.
Yes.
So we're not worried about getting 2 million comments and so forth, right? But of course, we'll take it step at a time and so forth. But at the center of it is the whole issue of how do we use technology as a real enabler to make the lives of our communities much easier. Remember those 5 thematic areas I spoke about regovern. So in part of regoverning, how do you introduce technology, how to become a smart city, how to become a city of the future that can make residents and all sundry who interact with the city of Ekurhuleni to feel at ease in terms of how they interact with the city and the speediness in which they get feedback from the city, not only of service delivery for the residents, but also business people when they are doing applications, when they are sending queries and so forth. So that for me is something that we'd want to do, but also improve on. And so I can also give you some examples in terms of how we want to do it. So the first thing that we will be introducing would want to have e-registers, where we are moving away from paper, and our communities are already registering when they come to the meetings through electronic platforms. By the way, we already have that, because in most of our customer care centers we have our queue management system. which is used, and that system helps communities not to stand in queues for long and so forth. But we'll just be taking that platform and using it for our registration process of meetings. But most importantly, for those who are not able to come to the meetings, we'll be having e-booklets, which will be in our apps and our website and so forth, where communities can just click on the e-booklet and follow what the IDP is about, and what are the new issues that are being raised in the IDP. And thirdly, we'll be using our libraries and our customer care centers. You know, in most of our libraries and customer care centers, we've got information screens. So we'll be flighting the IDP there and narrating to communities what the IDP is about, because we have an appreciation that not everyone can be able to attend an IDP meeting on a set day. Other people are working, they've got other responsibilities, but we have a responsibility as the city to ensure that everyone has got access to the IDP material and what the IDP is all about. And
are those all the interventions that the city has put in place, or are you thinking there are more that we can do, more interventions that we can put in place?
Yeah, so when the bus leaves for Durban, it doesn't, even before it gets onto the N3, you know, it must get out of Park Station, get onto the M1 and so forth, right? My view is that for now, these are sufficient in terms of introducing how different we want to do things, but also to let communities ease in, right? There are many WhatsApp groups, for instance, that you have of communities. So in each and every single WhatsApp group of in our communities, in our 111 wards, you'd want that link of the booklet to be there, right? And people can click. And if they've got issues with data, we've got Wi-Fi in our libraries. We've got Wi-Fi in our customer care centers. They can go to our customer care centers and be able to download. So there are many other things we'll introduce in future, but for now, we want to ease everyone into how we can have a new public participation. I mean, one of the craziest things that used to happen, or not crazy, but things that I think are a bit tedious. We used to have in our libraries suggestion boxes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So you go to the library, you read the IDP, you make a suggestion, you drop it in the box. And we can pick up those suggestions up until the closing dates of all the comments are received, right? When the closing dates of all comments, the strategy team and the budget team must go out, collect the suggestion boxes, read them, write them down, capture them and analyze them.
This is still happening, eh?
No.
Not anymore.
Yeah,
Okay.
Remember, we want to be a smart city.
Yes.
So what we'll be doing this year, when a community member goes to the library, in our study centers in the library, and in our technology centers, the libraries that have got technology centers, there will be desktops or laptops where they can go onto the website, click on the link and read the IDP. After reading the IDP, they can click on a link and make their inputs and their suggestion. It helps us to be able to analyze the data as quickly as possible, because as I said earlier on, we're in the era of big data. So
Yes.
we will not have a problem of so many people going. Of course, people are naughty. So you'd want a situation where you've got some basic controls, which I will not go into, where you don't have Tsholofelo making the same comment 20 times because they want to pursue a particular agenda. So we have basic controls around that. And by the way, even when you are having suggestion boxes, someone could go to a library every day, write the same comment and drop it in a box. So we need to have control so that because this thing of data, when you deal with it, garbage in, garbage out, so that whatever we get in is a fair reflection of what communities want out there. But when you don't have those controls, you'll have the same request or the same service delivery suggestion being put in. So we'll put controls in, and of course our IT is very sharp in terms of leading us in terms of cybersecurity and so forth. So we are not worried about that as well.
I like that. You mentioned that when it was happening, that you take the suggestion boxes and count them after the process. What are the timelines with regards to the IDP and budget? When can the public participate? When is the closing dates? Things like that. What are the timelines?
Yeah. So remember earlier on I indicated that our system is not, our system of governance is not only public participation but it's also representative.
Yes.
So I think what we need to explain to communities is that the budget cycle, the IDP budget cycle, doesn't start now, right? Now we are in April. It's a cycle that starts in July, August, and it starts with ward councillors, ward committees calling their public meetings, calling their sector meetings, because in each and every single ward you have what we call the ward committees, and a ward committee has about 10 sectors, give or take. And each sector is represented: women, youth, elderly, business people, people interested in environment, sports, and so forth. So they call those meetings and they look at the issues and the community needs. And of course, once they've agreed on what those community needs are, and this happens between July and August, then between September and October, strategy and budget goes to those communities, where we now meet with the representatives of the communities, which would have been the ward councillor and the ward committee members. They then give us that they've engaged in the past 2 months with their communities, and having engaged with their communities, these are the 5 issues that they want. We'll then advise them, no, but the police station is not done by the city of Ekurhuleni, it's done by national police, a school, university, and so forth. We look at those issues, and then we sign those issues off. So that's the representative part. Once those issues have been signed off by the representatives of the communities, we then go into our own process. Now, if you think of the bus scenario, we then call the different departments to say, hey, these passengers upstairs may not be happy with 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is what they want. Can these things be achieved? A department can say, look, based on the revenue that we've generated, the city has generated, we think we can achieve this still in this before next year, July, right? Remember, now we are in October, November. And then they say, okay, we want to put this as part of what we call the adjustment budget and the adjusted SDBIP. And then that's what happens. But where there are needs that can be put in during that adjustment process, we then carry them over into now in April, right? So in November, we have that discussions internally as the city, November, December. And then in January, February, we then table the adjustment budget and the adjustment SDBIP. And of course, there are all other technical things that go into it, including how the city has performed in real terms against the set indicators in the SDBIP, how the city is performing in real terms against the revenue generated by the city to meet those service needs of the communities, right? Yes, and then that happens in February. Immediately after February, we then look at the needs that were not catered in the adjustment and needs that need to be catered in future. And then in March, we then table the budget, which is what we've done now, the IDP and budget for the following year, July, going forward, right? And once we've tabled that, we must then now go test what we've tabled with the people themselves. Remember, in July, it is with July the previous year, it is the representatives who are telling us, and we work in offices, right? We are not there in the street, so we don't know what they would have said, but we need to go test that in April IDP public participations, which is a process that we are undertaking now. And when we go there, the community can say, no, that what committee and what councillor are not being truthful, we do not want this, we want that, and so forth, and then we take that into account. Then it becomes a continuous cycle. So it's a forever chain. It doesn't stop. So those are basically the timelines. But then immediately after April, we come back, have a conversation with the departments, look at the money, the revenue that I spoke about that we can potentially generate in the year. And if communities want, say, 1,000 needs, and then we say, look, with this X amount of money, we'll not be able to achieve 1,000 needs, we can be able to achieve 900 needs, and those are the 900 needs that we then take into council for adoption in the budget speech, which happens at the end of May, and the MMC Finance will then present the budget speech and say, explain the process that I've explained, and say this is how we have arrived at the budget, and the budget then gets adopted. And then that's the budget we then use in July, from 1st of July going forward. Then end of July, August, the public representative process happens again.
Okay, so the public participation informs the budget.
Yeah, there's no any other way of doing it, because
Yes.
as I said, remember, the constitution of the country is very clear. It's people centered, and it puts people at the heart of their own development.
Absolutely.
So it is public participation that informs the budget, right? But I must hastily say that as much as that's the case, remember the IDP and the budget need money to be implemented.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That fuel that goes into the bus. The city, from a business engagement point of view, must create an enabling environment for business to operate and for business to give us more money for fuel. We must make sure that there is an enabling environment for communities to work and have a meaningful life, live closer to where they work, they re-urbanize issues and so forth. And once that happens, communities can pay their rates and taxes. Once they pay their rates and taxes, they'll then say, because we've paid our rates and taxes of this much, this is what we want as services. And of course, it's important that we take into account the effect of the blip. What it has had on business, what it has had on communities in relation to them paying their services. But of course, the country is on a recovery mode, but we'll see that as we go forward in future. Yeah.
HoD Koopedi, you mentioned that the police station, for instance, is not the responsibility of local government. Can you just elaborate on the three spheres of government? Because people are under the impression that the municipality should take care of everything, and then everything is the responsibility of local government. Can you just take us through the different spheres of government and how they differ and how they come together in interdependency?
So I think that's a very important question, and thanks for that. I think firstly, let me say, you perhaps need to also get the guys from legislature this side, invite them, whether it's the council secretary or the speaker, and speak about the issues around civic education. Because whilst there's one government, and of course residents have a right to be confused where they are confused about what services are provided by who, because a police station may not be an issue of a municipality. It may be the national minister of police and so forth, right? But then the problem you have is that safety, community safety, is the responsibility of government, including local government, right? So in the constitution, you've got Schedule 4A and Schedule 4B and 5A and 5B. And in these schedules, there's a number of things that are very clear and directed of who must do what, right? And more often than not just only between communities, but also even with spheres of government. I mean, we're sitting with what sometimes I call unfunded or underfunded mandates, but that's a conversation for another day, because I hope we'll have this conversation also as we are about to wrap up the IDP and the budget, just to also reflect on what we have learned out there, but we'll explain those concepts then. So you have the national sphere of government, which is responsible for most things in Schedule 4A and 4B and 5B, 4A and 5A rather, of the Constitution, and local government is responsible for most things in 5A, 5B and 4B of the Constitution, and provincial government is also responsible for a number of issues that are in 4A and 5A of the Constitution, right? So there are differences, but I think the obvious ones that one can quickly mention: police stations, hospitals, education. So those are the typical ones that are not local government mandates. But of course, local government has a role to play in terms of facilitating and making sure that those things at least are happening within the communities. So I think it's a very important question, but as I said, it needs a broader conversation where firstly you speak about civic education, but secondly where we'll speak about the different mandates of government. And I think that one of speaking about the mandates between strategy and finance, we can be able to come and have a more meaningful and impactful conversation around that.
Thank you for your time, HoD Koopedi. Do you want to add anything?
No. I think we will be starting our public engagements on the 13th of April. The schedule will be available for all community members to out there. I can safely say we are going to Nigel and Tutuza on the 13th of April. And the other schedule, as I said, community members can access it in the website, but we'll also be putting up some posters. The only thing I would say is that we hope that community members and residents of Ekurhuleni will participate in the process and will take ownership of the bus and enjoy the trip in the bus and make sure that whatever comes out that is going to be spoken about or presented by the MMC Finance in the budget speech becomes a true reflection of the needs of the community of Ekurhuleni. Thank you.
Thank you so much, HoD. This was very fruitful, and I hope the residents could pick up some things and see how important it is for them to participate in the IDP, and how their voice is also important in the bigger scheme of decision making and where the money goes with regards to the budget.
Yeah. No.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thanks, Boot.
Thank you.
I'm board.
There you have it, Bahlali be Ekurhuleni. For more information on the budget process and the IDP, please visit our digital platforms and our website at ekurhuleni.gov.za. You can also visit your nearest CCC for more information. I'm Tsholofelo Masilela, and join me next time on EkuPodcast.